Conversation between two students. They are planning an oral report for their history class.
Okay,
Questions 18 through 22.
okay, so we're going to take a look at the influenza epidemic of 1918 and probably its effects, like how many people got the flu.
The numbers should be fairly easy to find.
Actually, I have some numbers already. Let me see. Okay, from spring 1918 to winter 1919, 25% of Americans, 1 out of every 4 people, contracted the flu, and about 3% of the people who got the flu died from it.
Wow, 1/4 of the population got sick. That's a lot. It must have had a pretty bad effect on the workforce and productivity. Imagine if 1/4 of the people didn't show up for work. Doctors and hospitals must have been overwhelmed.
Here's some more interesting numbers. 675,000 Americans died from influenza, but only 116,000 died in World War I. That means that the war killed only about 1/6 of the people who died of the flu.
I wonder how the flu statistics compare with the statistics for other major epidemics. You know, like AIDS and tuberculosis, or other flu epidemics. I think there were other flu epidemics later, after 1918.
I don't know, but I'll try to find out. That might be good to include in our report.
So, we can talk about the flu and its effects on society and the economy, and uh, compare it to other epidemics. What else should we do?
I think we should tell stories about its effects on real people. My great grandfather could remember the flu epidemic. He was born in 1910, so he was 8 years old at the time. He remembered that there were a lot of funerals. His baby sister and his best friend died of the flu, and that made an impression on him.
Wow. Did your great grandfather get the flu?
You know, I'm not really sure. He never said if he got sick. Well, I mean, if he did, he survived it and lived to be 91.
You could tell the story about your great grandfather. You know, that might be a great way to start our presentation.
Yeah? Maybe. It might get our audience's attention.
I think we should also talk about the connection between the flu and World War I. That was the first global war, and it was the first global epidemic in recorded history. I've done some reading about that. What I found out was it was the army that first noticed large numbers of men getting sick, and it was the army that first started reporting statistics about how many people were affected. You can imagine how fast influenza spread among soldiers living in close quarters and traveling to other countries.
Wow. Okay. We've got some pretty good ideas. I like what you're saying about focusing on the war and the global aspects.
I'll do a little more research and see what else I can find.
Good. I will too. I'll look for stuff about other epidemics. Why don't we meet again and talk about what we have? Can you meet again on Thursday?
Yeah, sure, that's fine with me.
Number 18. Questions 23 through 28. Listen to part of a discussion in an economics class.
The large economic unit called the corporation has come to define business activity.
Questions 20.
The large economic unit called the corporation has come to define business activity in a modern industrial service economy. Even a mid-sized corporation employs thousands of people, serves hundreds of thousands of customers, and controls assets and does business amounting to several $million. The growing power of corporations has brought increased intervention by the only body with sufficient strength and scope to match corporate power. And what body is this? What has enough power to control the corporation?
The government.
Yes, the federal government. The economic role of the government has grown tremendously over the past century as more and more corporate activities have come under regulation. Why has this happened?
Well, to prevent fraud against stockholders, for one thing. Also, to protect customers from fraud, like false advertising.
To protect the workers. For example, laws against child labor and unsafe working conditions.
Yes, these are all reasons why we have government regulation of business, not just in this country, but in most advanced industrial and service economies. Governments have taken on an increasing role in economic affairs. Let's take a minute to review what we talked about last time. What are the methods that governments use to influence economic activities? Elizabeth?
Taxes. Taxes encourage or discourage certain kinds of economic activity. Taxes are also a way for the government to get money to spend on programs.
That's right. So, okay, there's taxes and what else? Joshua?
Government spending. The government gives business incentives to produce certain goods or services. Also, spending could take the form of a tax break, or it could be a direct payment, like a government contract or a grant or a subsidy.
Yes, that's right. Governments intervene in economic activity through taxation and spending. A third method, of course, what we've just been talking about, regulation. There's been a tremendous increase in the laws and regulations governing the economic affairs of complex societies like ours. Beginning in the late 1800s, our political leaders rejected the idea that government governs best, which governs least. The government started to use its power to police the economic system. One of the first things the government did was to limit the exercise of monopoly power by regulating railroads and public utilities. After that, the government began regulating utility rates, costs for telephone, electricity, fuel, and so on. Since then, a whole set of industries has come under government regulation. Financial markets, the airlines, trucking, barge and water traffic, oil and natural gas pipelines, and so on. Also, in recent decades, there's been a rapid growth of social regulation. What do I mean by social regulation?
Things like laws that require a food package to list all ingredients?
Yes, that's a good example. There are a number of laws regulating food and cosmetics. Social regulation also includes the laws that were first passed to protect workers in mines, and then workers in general. Now there are laws that protect all of society. For example, regulations for air and water pollution, and for storage and disposal of hazardous materials like nuclear waste. There are also safety standards for automobiles and consumer products, such as car seats for babies. All of these are forms of social regulation. We've come a long way since the days of laissez-faire capitalism, when business ran free and unchecked by government. When the political leaders of the 19th century first started proposing regulation of business, this was considered a radical idea. However, with the passage of time, the radical ideas of that era became the accepted convictions of today. The general public has come to accept and even expect these limits on capitalism.
Number 23. What is the discussion mainly about? Number 23. What is the
Leaders of